quickly. God bless the families that have their children and brothers and sisters and bubbies and family relations taken viciously hostage by the Hamas monsters in the Gaza Strip. But I want to say here, as a military veteran, combat veteran, in 20 years, I've seen a lot. I've seen a lot. Okay, I've seen a lot of things that can go horribly wrong and things that can go right for mission effectiveness. The IDF was making momentum. They were winning the war decisively until the Biden administration got in the way and then put earmarks and milestones on the funding schedule for Israel's war against Hamas, what they claimed to support unanimously. Even Democrats in the Senate said they supported it when they heard about the horrible, horrible, horrific brutality of Hamas to put conditions on the support based on ceasefire agreements. President Reagan in the United States, I'm old enough to remember President Reagan's first term and second term because when I was 18, President Reagan became president after the Jimmy Carter crisis situation in which hostages were taken by Iranian mullahs when Iran was taken over by all the radicals there during that time. And then Iran was so concerned about an administration change of policy, foreign policy, essentially that President Reagan would drop a nuke on Tehran if they didn't release the hostages. They released the hostages. Peace through strength was President Reagan's message. And he also said the United States will never, ever negotiate with terrorists. This is what Bibi Netanyahu has done. He has negotiated not only with Hamas terrorists in Gaza Strip, but the big chiefs, the senior people that are protected by Qatar, billionaires, living off the backs of very poor, starving Palestinians that the world supposedly cares so much about. So you have all this going on here. I want every hostage brought home. But before all this nonsense started, with Qatar and Egypt and the Biden administration going back and forth saying, I will put conditions on future support to Israel if you don't have a pause or ceasefire. Listen, there are people in Europe and elsewhere who care more about saving Palestinian lives than they care on vengeance and then exterminating the vermin who massacred babies, grandmothers, and adults, beheading, the most horrific things you have ever heard, worse than ISIS. Please be with me. Pray for Jerusalem. Pray for a realignment of IDF's strategy to win this war against Hamas. No Palestinian Authority will ever have control of that small strip of real estate again. I encourage a new law to be passed in Israel today. This law should just say, any Palestinian that directly or indirectly supports Hamas, you are subject to immediate arrest and in line for deportation. If you are found on social media like TikTok per se, okay, it was run by the Chinese, communist Chinese. If they found out that you are doing the same messaging or echoing the same messaging of the Hamas leadership on TikTok, on their behalf, you will be arrested and put on a list for deportation. That means pulling their passport, pulling their visa, even so-called Israeli blue card citizenship, you will pull it. And if you pass the law here, listen, that is sedition against the state of Israel, if you directly or indirectly support any terrorist organization, you will be arrested and you will be deported from the nation of Israel. And you will never be allowed to come back to Israel again, period. And as far as demolishing houses of Palestinians that murdered my brother and sister Ken in Israel, keep on demolishing that property. But do this. Either one or two things. Install an IDF battalion on that real estate that's been cleared from that demolished property, or move a brave Jewish family in that land and annex it as property of Israel. I don't care if it's an A, B, or C. Okay? This is the only way. Strong consequences, consistent messaging will win the war every time. What we're doing now, piecemealing, release 13 hostages for 39 Palestinian criminal terrorists, people guilty of first and second homicide, attempted murder. They're releasing these people. In the past, you hear about this individual by the name of the Butcher. He's a mastermind of all these massacres in Israel from Gaza Strip when he invaded those kibbutz and the Negev Desert. He was one of those that was among 1,000 Palestinian criminals that were let out of jail early to save one IDF soldier that was held in captivity. I want everyone to be held in captivity to be released immediately, but the way to do that, Russia in the past, years ago, I cannot remember details yet, they were dealing with a radical Islamic group at that time. This is back when the time of, I think, Yasser Arafat, and the time during those days when you had airplane bombings and things of this nature, Olympic bombings by Palestinians. When that was going on, well, what happened is that there was a Russian operative, a Russian soldier or someone, intelligence operative, I think, was kidnapped by this Islamic group. Well, Russia had one of their senior members in jail or in custody at that time. So they threatened them, if you don't release our man now, we will send him back in pieces. And that's exactly what they did. And then released all their hostages immediately. Horrific? How about the tragedy of unintended consequences of future hostage situations that we have complete control right now to never happen again in Israel? Rabbi Kahan, he rubbed a lot of people raw on what his statements were said. People described him as a terrorist, as a racist, Islamophobe, and everything else. But if we would have implemented just 25% of what he was saying to be true during that time, he was a Knesset member for at least 1 year, one term. This massacre would have never happened. And Hamas would never have been in control of the Gaza Strip in the first place. And all this ABC stuff would never happen before. And we would have complete control of all 5 Jewish holy sites in Israel. And we'd have Jewish prayer in Temple Mount. You heard me right. If we would have listened to him and not Moshe Dayan, if we're going forth, if Golda Meir, of blessed memory, would have lived a little bit longer, she would have command and control of the situation. Golda Meir had more spine than Benjamin Netanyahu ever did. I'm sorry, I had to get this off my chest. But God bless you. Shalom Aleichem. I love everyone. I love the Palestinian. I love Muslims. I do. And yes, I'm an idolist, but I'm also a realist too. This situation of piecemeal releasing hostages for 2 more days of a ceasefire, humanitarian ceasefire, what? To protect Hamas terrorists? This is not protecting Palestinian civilians. The Palestinian civilians are working hand in hand with Hamas. They always have been since 2007. Rabbi ben-Emmett signing out. Please look around. Go to Aretz 7, Israeli news service, the very best news service where I get most of my information from. Take care.